You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello everybody, welcome to this week's Essential Apple Podcast. The news has been a bit thin on the ground, I'll be honest, so it's a bit of luck that this week I have Mark joining me. Hello, Mark.
Hello, Simon. How are we doing today? It's winter has finally arrived, I think, on these shores. How's it over with you?
Yeah, it's not been too bad today, but I'm told yet again there will be another beast from the east coming.
Snowmageddon.
I'm getting a bit bored of that nickname. It's time they come up with a new one. But allegedly, it's going to turn very cold starting tomorrow.
I'm going to go with Wendy from the west instead of Beast from the east.
Yeah, exactly. And we are joined by Andreas Gailunas of Pixelmator. Hello, Andreas.
Hey, everyone.
And I guess we have to do the British thing now and say, how is the weather in Lithuania?
It's definitely getting quite wintry these days. Just a few days ago, we had our first little frost, and right now it's just hovering around +2, +4 degrees and kind of rainy. So just getting down to that difficult time of the year that you kind of have to just grin and bear it and get through it until spring comes around.
Grit your teeth till spring. That's it. Close the curtains, turn the fire up, pour a large scotch, and hope for the best.
Exactly.
You know how this show goes. You've been on before, so I think, Mark, do you want to ask some opening questions to ease us in?
Yeah, well, obviously, a lot of people know Pixelmator, but let's just go back in time and just refresh ourselves. So, Pixelmator, how did it start up, and why did it start up?
So the story behind that is in, I think, late 2006, Apple announced Core Image, and two brothers, Solus and Idas, decided that would be a great opportunity to create an image editor using that technology, because a lot of it was now baked into OS 10, as it was called then. It shouldn't be too difficult for a couple of guys to get something going, and they wanted a kind of very Mac, very very sort of native image editor. And when Core Image was released, I think it was 2007, early 07. Yeah, they started working on it, and I think there was maybe one or two other guys, and from the idea to the first sort of running product, it took, I think, 9 months or something. And so 2007, Pixelmator came out. Just a GPU-powered image editor. Was also very, very unusual at the time because everything was running on CPU just because of the way the technology was back then. And yeah, that's kind of how Pixelmator came about.
So when you were first developing Pixelmator to start off with, was it a conscious decision to go GPU? I mean, why not just do what everyone else did and not just go, you know what? It seems to be the trend these days that the CPUs will get faster, let them just catch up. So it was a conscious decision from the outset?
Yeah, because basically the GPU is obviously a very powerful part of the computer, of the hardware, and pretty much no image editing aspect taken advantage of it to process images just because it was very difficult to sort of code your own shaders and stuff, and everything was CPU based, like on OpenCL and stuff like that. And GPU based stuff only became possible with Core Image pretty much, and that's why it was a conscious decision, because the idea was it would be possible to get everything running really quickly on the GPU. Yeah.
So, what sort of stuff were you developing on? What was your hardware back in the day that you were?
I actually wasn't around back then, to be honest. I've been at Pixelmator for about 3 years, but I just know the history behind it. But I wouldn't be able to tell you the hardware back then. I'm trying to think, but I don't want to get anything wrong here.
The Mac the history side of Apple is definitely Apple's specialty. You give him a year, and he'll be able to go, "Oh yes, that was the so and so PC." That would. Yeah, you've just fallen into the Intel era then. You didn't have to do anything back in the PowerPC days.
You know, I think Pixelmator was actually, I think they were the first couple of versions was PowerPC, and there was at some point, I think the transition to Intel, like full transition, happened. So obviously, when it came out, I think the Macs were Intel, but there were lots of Macs that were PowerPC still being used by people, obviously.
And now, obviously, we are going to be dotting around a little bit in this interview. So now, obviously, everything is running under Metal, I would assume.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of it. So Pixelmator Pro is obviously High Sierra and Mojave, and that's because right now you have to have a Metal compatible GPU to run the app, and that's just for variety of reasons. The original Pixelmator is partially Metal, partially other technologies, obviously like OpenGL, OpenCL, Core Imaging, whatever. Yeah.
And I'm going to go completely out of my depth and comfort zone here. Just in the real world of what you develop in, just how good or how poor is Metal, and what is it like to sort of work with? Because one of the things I always like to look at, especially at WWDC, you get the slides that say these features that can only be done with Metal. You see things like Replay Kit, which never really come to fruition. What's been for you one of the surprising things about Metal?
Well, I have to put my hands up and say I'm a marketing guy. I don't do much coding or any coding at all. But I do obviously know some of the things that go on. So with Metal, we can do and basically with going through the GPU in general, we can bring lots of real-time stuff. So with the original Pixelmator, it was real-time previews of effects and adjustments. I don't know. Back in the day in Photoshop, you wouldn't actually get like previews of your effects as you put them on. So you'd apply them and see what happens. Whereas with Pixelmator, you could kind of move some sliders to see real-time what happens in your image. And so with Metal now in Pixelmator Pro, we've been basically able to bring the entire non-destructive workflow. So you apply adjustments, effects, and whatever, and everything is non-destructive. So the changes are real time in your image, and they also remain editable whenever you want to sort of go back and adjust anything like the colors or the effects, layer styles, and so on. So that's kind of, and obviously Metal makes everything more efficient and faster. So you know, whereas maybe with the original Pixelmator we wouldn't have been able to do the non-destructive stuff. Now with Metal and the improved hardware, everything can work non-destructively. So that's kind of that's one of the main benefits of a technology like Metal, which really cuts down the overheads and gets you makes it possible to basically use the hardware pretty much directly without any kind of in between processing.
Now you've mentioned the I word, the iPad, and that's been one of the products that's called probably the most conversation in the last sort of few shows that we've had. I think we've all forgotten about the Mac Mini, God bless it. Where do you stand on the iPad being a creative powerhouse? Now, obviously, I'm probably targeting this to the wrong person, but where do you feel that the iPad is now is being so closely priced to a laptop, yet being arguably so far away from a laptop?
It's difficult. The iPad is such a versatile device, but at the same time, obviously, people what they want, a lot of people, is to move their professional workflows onto it, which obviously doesn't work for everyone. But it's getting closer. It's getting a lot closer. With this latest iPad Pro, the hardware inside it is incredible, and you've got obviously people like Adobe bringing Photoshop to it, and just little steps. But to me, where is the iPad? I mean, I have an iPad. I use it for various things. I've actually one interesting thing that I use it for is I use it for sheet music. So I sing in a choir and I have all my like music on there. And obviously I love editing photos. Where they were working on an app called Pixelmator Photo, which was announced at the Apple event in Brooklyn just what was it, three weeks ago, I think. And I've really been enjoying using that. So it's really just it really depends on what kind of things you do and what kind of apps you find and tools you have, and that determines what kind of device it is for you. Because maybe editing video, some people might not be enough. Editing images, you might have everything you need on there. Just really depends on the person.
I will admit, coming from the video editing side of things, I'm really disappointed with the lack of what I call quality video editing apps, which winds me up all the more when you see developers like yourself making pro apps like Pixelmator, and you're thinking, why can I not edit a video and have the same love and attention of doing video work on an iPad as all these, of all the drawing apps? Now, you did mention the A word. What was your take on the Adobe demonstration overall? First of all, I should ask: did you see the demonstration at the Apple event?
Yeah, I was in Brooklyn actually. I was at the event.
Get you! Did you nick anything? Did you get a pen?
I did get to take a look at all the devices, and they looked really great. And yeah, the demonstration. I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what the app is going to have, what the kind of tools it's going to have when it comes out. That's really what I want to see, because obviously the big I guess buzz around the whole thing is that it's full Photoshop, but I've heard various comments around the web on places like Reddit, saying that there's quite a few things missing. We'll see how how everything works. But obviously, I think it's great. I think for us, it's not like we're saying that like, oh no, they brought Photoshop to the iPad. Oh, we're gone. No, I mean Photoshop's always been around the Mac, and they have the whole idea of the app is kind of different to what we're trying to do. So it's not like we're I don't know, we're really we feel it really affects us, and I think it's cool. It's great to see. I think it's great to see people get more and more out of the iPad. So I'm all for it.
I think I've seen the same Reddit thread that you had, where basically what everyone is saying is that they're bringing the Photoshop engine to the iPad, and then they're going to start coding features in as they go along, which sounds it sounds a bit reactionary to me, because it can't have been that far off Adobe's radar to go, we'll avoid the iPad because it hasn't got that much power. It hasn't got that much power. In Apple, especially in this event, they really did put that one slide where they said it's got the graphics, it's got more processing power than PCs and an Xbox One. It just, I don't know, something just feels a little bit off with sort of, oh, here's an engine, we'll plug it in as we go. Rather, it just seems a bit haphazard, but maybe I'm reading too much into
I think
that.
one of the biggest problems with like the iPad isn't so much the lack of power. It definitely has the processing power. I think it's just like memory, because everything has to run on the RAM pretty much. And on a Mac, you've got like spot memory you can put on the hard drive. So let's say you're running an app like Pixelmator, you've got, I don't know, let's say whatever, 8 gigs of RAM. You've got always like backup and stuff. And I think, you don't really have that on the iPad. I think that's like the biggest roadblock. And I don't know, I think at some point we'll get a solution for it somehow. And yeah, but actually another thing I want to say is that it's really difficult actually shipping, a brand new product, even for a huge company like Adobe. So I get the fact that they're bringing maybe a somewhat smaller set of tools. I
think personally, and it's just my take, but the thing is with Photoshop is a huge application, and I'm pretty sure that it contains great big chunks of legacy code, and I think it's a lot more difficult to take something like that port it onto iOS and say, we're going to give you full Photoshop, because there is so much stuff in there, much of which has probably got to be rewritten from the ground up to work with metal, to work on the iPad, to work with, a more constrained RAM overhead. That's a really big undertaking. Whereas, when you look at, for example, when we had Affinity on and they were talking about doing Affinity Photo for the iPad, as you said, we had an advantage really, because Affinity for the Mac is a new product built from the ground up to use all the latest hardware and software components. So to take that and then put it onto the iPad was still a huge undertaking, but we were not saddled with trying to recreate big chunks of legacy code that have been there forever. And I think that's a lot of it from Adobe's point of view. And I think I think they were late to the game, because they started off on iOS messing around with these sort of bits of Photoshop. There was various kind of editors and things which were cut down bits of this and that. And people were like, yeah, but this isn't really what we want. And I think when more fully featured tools started to appear, especially once the iPad Pro arrived, the Adobe, I think they found they'd been caught on the back foot. And so, I don't have any information on this, but I'm pretty sure that they found themselves in a position where it's, damn, we're going to have to start building from the ground up. So, that's my take.
Yeah, I think that's I'd agree with that for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah. See, I mean, again, as you say, I mean, Pixelmator is not, it's not an ancient product, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying that it's not got some history, because it has, and it's been around for a few years now. And obviously, I retweeted the post about what's the difference between Pixelmator and Pixelmator Pro. I mean, in that, you guys were saying, well, it's not like Pixelmator is a lesser editor or a lighter editor, or it's just, that's the Pixelmator we built. And now there's all these new technologies available. There's all these new ways of working. So Pixelmator Pro, like a reimagining, it's Pixelmator done from the ground up again. Even you have had to effectively say, we need to clear out some of this legacy code and rebuild, because there are things now which can be done differently.
Yeah, absolutely, exactly. That's pretty much what we came up against with the original Pixelmator. We wanted to bring a lot of things like non-destructive editing and so on, and it was just like, okay, we'll have to redo everything. And if we kind of completely redo it and create this kind of new app, and we take away the old app from people as well, I'm a bit crazy. So, all right, let's just start with a brand new app. Leave the old Pixelmator, for people to use, because obviously lots of people love it. People are so used to it and familiar with it, and like these are quite drastic changes. So we thought, okay, we'll start with a new app, and that was part of I guess the main reason was we wanted to bring all these new ways of working and take advantage of all these new technologies, and we couldn't really do it without just rewriting everything pretty much.
Yeah, I've got the Pixelmator Pro, the latest beta, and I have to say it is massively different from the old Pixelmator. The old Pixelmator obviously has a very familiar Photoshop-esque.
I had the rage when I installed Pixelmator Pro. I was that person, Andrew, who went, why is this changed? Where is this tool? Why have they changed it all? Damn you, Pixelmator. And then it was like, I'm old and I don't know how to learn things, but then you start, it's like it sort of comes back to the iPad. There's those fuddy-duddies now who type on these plastic thing called keys, and yet there's a whole generation of, behind us who just type on glass. And that is exactly what I had with Pixelmator Pro. I was like, why is this menu here? This is nonsense. It should be over there. Where is the stuff on the left again?
I have to admit, I've sent in a feedback because I do not like the tools on the right hand side. Sorry, I really don't.
It's all right. It's right. Actually, I read that just before I sat down for the podcast, because I'm also on the beta email, so I take a look at and answer the emails there. But I get that. It's so exactly. I mean, if we want to have a quick chat about like the difference between Pixelmator and Pixelmator Pro.
Well,
so yeah.
Yeah, go for it. That's what we're here for. Because, like as I said to you before we started recording, to me now, Pixelmator it's that must we do of every now and again in our Slack chat room. We do what are the essential apps you install on your Mac or on your machine. Pixelmator is right. In fact, it's become my new Paint Shop Pro.
Yeah, that's great. So what I wanted to say before was exactly. Simon was spot on saying that Pixelmator is kind of Photoshop-esque. And it was very much inspired by that kind of way of thinking, at the time. Whereas with Pixelmator Pro, we wanted to like create this, completely native version of the app. So I mean, tools on the right, that was inspired by kind of the Photos app, right? That's how things is set up over there. Like layers on the left, that was inspired partly by Keynote, and we try to take all these kind of aspects of Mac apps and use that as inspiration for creating this. I get the whole thing of like it's unfamiliar and I mean I hate change. For example, speaking of Reddit has a new design, and I'm sticking with the old design for as long as they let me because I don't know, I'm just familiar with it. I like it, and I'm like, oh no, I hate all this new no change. But for me, with Pixelmator Pro, after a couple of weeks of using it, actually. I was completely hooked on the way we're doing it. But that's not to say that everything's perfect. Not by any means.
Well, no, I mean, it's a beta, and obviously, the whole point of the beta is to get feedback and find what works and what doesn't. And in reality, there's no reason that the tools can't be on the right. It's just I have 30 years of muscle memory where every app in the whole world has the tools on the left-hand side. The other thing which... it works fine on my MacBook Pro because my MacBook Pro obviously is a 13-inch screen, so along the size of a iPad, a large iPad Pro. So you've gone for a one-window design, so everything's within the frame, which also no doubt ties in really, really well with an iPad.
I've got a saying here, right. This is where I'm going to say almost clear. And just, was it a conscious decision to have a bit of synergy between the desktop and the iPad app?
Well, I mean, the Pixelmator Pro for iPad, we actually were planning on creating it and releasing it, but for now, it's not something that we'll be doing, at least in the near future, just because it's we haven't managed to get to a point where we're kind of happy with it. So Pixelmator Photos is the app that we're working on right now. On the iPad, we'll see how it goes. But in terms of the design, I get the for example, in the one window. I think in your email, Simon, you said that the right hand side takes up too much space. And that's actually something that we're very much aware of, and we do plan to make some changes there because the presets tend to. I think personally, we generally think overall that they take up too much space. So that's definitely something that we'll be doing in the future, and we have plans to. Improve the layer sidebar. I mean, actually, so Pixelmator Pro isn't itself, the app isn't in beta. There's a beta version.
Oh yeah, it's a beta, so it's big. I mean, and in the email they said, for example, at the moment the tool options take up a lot of screen estate, but at the moment there's no key to toggle them, so you have to go to the view, hide the tool options. Now, if there was a key toggle for that, then it would be less of a problem because it's like hiding and showing your palette. So that's what a beta is for, isn't it? That's so that I can send you that feedback and say, could we have a and these things happen all the time. And I'm participating in the Affinity Publisher beta, and I kept sending in, and so did other people, and please can we have a command shortcut for place, because the way I work, I'm constantly placing things in my layouts, photographs, whatever. And at the moment, you have to go up to the, edit, place, navigate to the document. Can we at least have a command shortcut? And I don't know what beta it is now, 1.7 something. I sent in an error or like a request this morning, actually, when I sent one in to same as you and said, please, can we actually have a command toggle for place in the publisher? And then there was there's a new version you could download, and lo and behold, it was in there. So I had to send one ignore that last comment. It's now in. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the joy of being involved in the beta, of course, because I'm not a developer, I'm not a coder, but I can, in a small way, I feel I can interact with the people who are building apps that I like and say, I like this, I don't like that, or I found a bug here, or this doesn't work. And so, if you enjoy something, give something back. And so I find participating in the betas, something I enjoy. For that reason, I feel like I'm giving a little bit back.
Yeah, I love feedback of all kinds. For me, the most frustrating thing out of pretty much everything is when people leave the comments or app store reviews saying, oh, I really wanted to like this app, but I didn't like it. I'm like, oh, I can't use it. It's impossible to understand it. No, tell me exactly what you don't like.
Tell me what doesn't work for you. Yeah, as I said, in the email, the one frame thing works wonderful on my MacBook Pro. I'm sure it would work, when the time comes on an iPad. But on a big screen, multi-monitor setup, I like to tear the palettes off and put them on a separate screen.
Yeah, it makes sense. And by no means are you the first to have that feedback. And obviously, it's something we have in mind. It's on the list. We'll see how we can make things better here. So and it's definitely something that we have been thinking about. We have let's say for the next maybe 6 months or something, we have things lined up, and then further down the line we are planning things for next year and stuff like that. Yeah, so
yeah, sure, that's great. And by the way, I am liking the beta. I am enjoying.
I say, don't invite the guest on and say, right, we've got a guest on the show. I don't like this. I don't like that. That's wrong. This is wrong.
No. I'm just saying. And Andreas is saying he read my email that I sent earlier today, and they were some things. And I tried to be constructive. I didn't just go, it's horrible, and the options take up too much space on my screen. I offered a solution. Give it a toggle that will help. There we go. It's just it's a to and fro. This is the point. But I do like it, and there are things. And like Andrea said, I'm sure if I use it enough, I'll get used to the tools being on the right hand side. It's just for me, every app I've ever used has the toolbox on the left, and that's just. Why is that? I don't know, because that's just how it's been, and for 30 years that's what people do, and I guess that's just habit. Why do we put them there? Well, every other app has the toolbox on the left, so I'll stick it there.
Speaking of feedback, so how do you decide about what features to include and what to exclude? Is there obviously there's a conscious decision to listen to the beta people, but when's a decision made and how is it made?
Well, it depends on sometimes. So quick things like, for example, a keyboard shortcut for hiding the tool options, right? That's something you can do pretty much. I do have a shortcut for hiding the tools. It's Command T. So I'm not sure, maybe for tool options, but without tools, yeah, we could add one for that, for example. But yeah, so it's things like keyboard shortcuts. That's something that if you think it's a good idea. Well, if we think it's a good idea, we'll just go, yeah, let's do that, and it'll take 5-10 minutes. Bigger features, it depends on the amount of time it would take to develop. So, for example, if it's a really difficult thing to do and quite a niche feature, we'll be like, all right, well, maybe we'll think about that at some point down the line. If it's a fairly simple feature and we feel it would really improve the app, and there are also requests for it, for example, then yeah, we'll try and stick it in ASAP. So for example, when Pixelmator Pro came out, we didn't have things like the convert selection into shape feature, which I don't know. I mean, for some people, it's very useful. For others, they wouldn't notice it wasn't there. But we had a fair number of requests for the feature. So we prioritize that over, maybe something else.
Now, as you know, a young upstart such as myself emailed you a while ago asking about the resizing algorithm for iOS. Is the way that it resizes on the iPhone and the iPad been significantly tweaked and changed since I last put in my email?
No. The thing is actually that with the resizing algorithms on the iOS version is that there's two different ones. There's one for the image size and one for non-destructive layer resizing, and that was actually the problem that in Pixelmator for iOS, we had actually worked on a non-destructive resizing that we were planning to later bring to Pixelmator Pro. And that's why I think you had some trouble with that, because it would non-destructively resize, and the preview or the sort of rendering you would get of that resized layer in the image wouldn't be I think it was a bit too sharp or something, a bit too maybe slightly blocky. But I think when you export it should have been more or less fine. But anyway, in Pixelmator Pro, it's different. Yeah, the non-destructive resizing and the image size algorithms are a little bit different as well. But we are working on actually bringing certain algorithms as well for resizing to the Mac, like nearest neighbor for like pixel art, and like interesting ones like Lanchos for sort of smoother scaling of things. So yeah, we're working on that.
I do feel like I threw you under the bus on a little bit, but you are right. Actually, now I think on it, when you resize it on the screen, it looks one way, but then when you bounce it out, it does all tend to look nice and groovy. To be fair, with Pixelmator Pro, I've just been resizing, grabbing things willy-nilly, and it's been absolutely brilliant. So that's all that side. Now, machine learning. So you can go into Pixelmator Pro, and you've got an option there to enhance your photos by machine learning. But how does a machine learn to know what the colours are? Because wouldn't you have to tell it what the colours are for it to learn? Or am I being completely woefully ignorant of what machine learning is?
Ooh, I'll try to explain this to the best of my ability. But the idea behind, or I guess the way the ML enhanced feature works is we give it a certain number of photos that have bad colors. For example, bad white balance, bad contrast, bad, what else? We have bad lighting, bad exposure. And then we give it photos which have all those things that are the exact same photo, but with all those things fixed. And using the power of machine learning magic, we train an algorithm to go from the broken version to the good version, basically. And then you pack that into a Core ML model, stick it in the app, and for example, it will fix white balance in photos with, it's the most accurate white balance correction tool that we have found in any app on any device. Because that's when you can measure, like you can say, okay, this is the correct white balance, like, there's no yellow or blue tint. We measured it with various apps like Photos and Photoshop and whatever. And this was, I think, at least twice as accurate. So it was the first one we found where we could rely on it pretty much most of the time. Whereas other apps, it's kind of like, this is a little bit off. I guess it's maybe better. But with machine learning, we managed to get it to a point where it's spot on most of the time.
I see. I do remember the last time you were on the show, and we were looking at, I think, it was yourself, was it? We were looking at the big machine learning graphic, and I said, right, I'm going to come back to that. What are some of the other machine learning bits and bobs that's under the hood of the Pixelmator gear?
So there's the automatic layer naming feature. So when you drop in photos, it will recognize the contents and name the layer based on the contents of the image. What else have we got? So we use certain ML things for the repair tool and the quick selection tools, but that's more in training them rather than them relying on machine learning directly within the app. And actually, I think people with machine learning, they often think that like when you use it, the machines get more intelligent. But that's not really kind of how it is.
That is exactly what I was thinking. And again, that just shows my ignorance of machine learning, because in my head, I'm thinking, right, it's a finely tuned algorithm and it will start learning and absorbing.
No, because the way it works, actually, we train the algorithm and that's it. Now it's learned, it's educated, and it won't. Everything, like all the processing for the enhanced feature and the lane naming happens on the device. Like nothing, no data ever leaves, and it's all just packed into. I mean, I shouldn't say this because it kind of ruins the magic for everyone. But machine learning is just like really, really advanced statistical modeling. Maybe I'm wrong here, but that's how I kind of imagine it. It just allows you to process huge numbers of data. In our case, for example, 20 million photos, right? And then create a model based on all the data in those 20 million photos that you can fit into a fairly small Core ML model. And then based on that, the model can predict certain things. So for example, it can say, okay, this photo has a person in it, this photo has a dog in it, this photo has a hot air balloon in it. Or it can say, this photo has the white balance off by this much, this photo has the white balance off by that much. This the contrast isn't quite as good as it should be by that much. And that's kind of how I understand machine learning. Again, I'm not super duper expert on this, but that's generally, yeah.
Yeah, that's no, I'm totally with you there, because as I understand it, and the people I've spoken to who know more about these things than I do, they pretty much explain it that way, that the machine learning is about how you build an algorithm. What you do is you throw a huge amount of data at it, massive, as you say, 20 million photographs or whatever, and you use that to create a huge statistical model. And what the machine learning does is crunch that down into something that can be turned into an algorithm that can then, as you say, recognize the white balance is off, or this is a picture of a dog, or, this is grass, so it should be green. This is the sky, it should probably be blue. So once you've done that, the machine learning part and the core ML and all that is about how you feed that data in to build algorithms for your application. Once it's done, it doesn't learn anything else, or at least not unless you've got a feedback loop. And if you're using a feedback loop, obviously you have to make your users aware that we are taking the information that you are using it when you do that, and saying, do you want us to do that or not? But most apps don't, because that's just another overhead. That's a huge amount of overhead. I mean, maybe if you're Google, you can manage that, but most other people are like, we don't need the aggravation, we don't need the permissions and all the GDPR that goes with that. We just we feed it all that information, we build an algorithm, then we put it in the app, and then when it's in the app, it uses that algorithm, but it's all on the user's device, and nothing goes anywhere. So that's how I understand it, and so I think we're pretty much on the same page there, Andreas.
I would like to know, how do you feed 20 million photos into an app so it learns from it? I'd love to know that process.
See, that's one thing I wish I knew, but I have to ask a resident scientist.
What you get, Mark, is you get a really, really enormous, data center, and then you point your app, and you go open, and then open drive, and then you go away for a long time while it crunches it all. I'm sure that's not how it works.
Does it use cloud processing and all those other buzzwords that people like to throw out there?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty sure that's not how you do it, and they certainly don't have a lot of interns going open, close, open, close, open, close through millions of photographs.
I've probably had worse jobs. What are some of the features that you really like in Pixelmator Pro, then, Andreas? What are the ones that sort of really that you like, and of what the customer feedback has been, what they seem to like?
I think what I personally like is the non-destructive nature of the app, and some things we're also working to improve in this area. I keep prefacing things with that, but anyway. So basically, color adjustments, effects. So any kind of layer manipulation is mostly non-destructive in Pixelmator Pro. So you can always go back and sort of undo your changes. And there are things that I would love for us to improve there as well, and that we're actually actively working on and soon ship in an upcoming update that will make this whole non-destructiveness even more apparent, which I think right now is it's a little bit not entirely visible because you can't see them on the layers and whatever. But yeah, we'll get that one. We can chat about that another time. And I think that we've had a really positive feedback about is the are the photo editing tools. So the color adjustments. Obviously, we've got like full support, native support for raw images, and the adjustments have been designed in such a way so as to preserve image colors. I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but like you might edit a photo and pump up the saturation a little bit too much and end up with like artifacts and stuff like that, and it's just kind of things that you want it to be like really, say, vibrant, which is usually a bad idea. But anyways, let's say you'll say, damn everyone else, I want this to be a really, really vibrant, nuclear green, but it ends up with artifacts, in various areas of the image. So we've tried to sort of minimize that, and I think that is one of the reasons why people enjoy the adjustments so much. And another thing is that I think they're quite easy to use, but they're still the kind of time-tested tools that curves, levels, and things that people are used to, and a few additions that from sort of say the original Pixelmator, like replace color and just stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, definitely had good feedback about the photo editing tools.
Excellent. Right, I've got two questions here from Steve Hammond that he'd asked me to ask you, Andreas. He'd like to know about the Pixelmator for iPad cross compatibility with Pixelmator Pro, which I'm pretty sure is, well, as far as I'm aware, is pretty much 100%. But would you like to clarify that for him?
So I guess he's asking about the Pixelmator Pro, Pixelmator Pro, for Mac, and Pixelmator, the original Pixelmator for iOS. In which case, they're not exactly compatible, just because Pixelmator Pro is a brand new app, all this non-destructive stuff, all these new tools and features, and yeah. So I mean, there are certain ways you can get around that. For example, by working on exporting things in like PSD, so Photoshop documents, which the original Pixelmator on the iPad can open. We really do eventually want to create a Pixelmator Pro for the iPad, but I think people sometimes forget that we're a very small company, and certain things it's tricky to do with the kind of quality that we want to do it with. So we could bring something there that maybe was a bit half baked, but there's not really any point. So for now we want to concentrate on the Pixelmator Pro on the Mac and make that as good as it possibly can be. Make people like Simon happy, as happy as possible before we undertake something as big as Pixelmator Pro.
Oh, I know. That's fine. It's fine. Perhaps I didn't phrase that correctly. I'm although that's a great answer. I was thinking if you have I'm putting words into Steve's mouth here, so maybe I'm wrong, but I was thinking more about if you've got a load of stuff that you've done previously, on either original Pixelmator or Pixelmator for the iPad.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, in that case, then everything's going to just open up in Pixelmator Pro on the Mac. Yeah, so everything
it's more of a one-way street. I wasn't. Well, I don't know about Steve, but I was not envisaging saying, "Oh, can I take something from Pixelmator Pro, which obviously is more advanced and more complicated, as it were, because you're going backwards. That's like taking something from, I don't know, Photoshop 2019 and saying, can I open it in Photoshop 6? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Yeah. I interpreted his question more about, can I take my images that I have done in Pixelmator, and bring them into Pixelmator Pro without any...
In that case, yeah.
And the other question,
yeah.
And the other question, he says, I would like some more information about Pixelmator Photo for iPad in general, and would it include a digital asset management or anything similar? That's a bit of a big question, because I know digital asset management in and of itself is a huge undertaking in its own right.
Yeah. So I mean, there aren't really that many apps in general out there that do digital asset management either on the Mac or a mobile device, because it is a very tricky thing to do right. And for us, again, we try to rely as much on existing Apple products, Apple features as possible, so that we can focus on bringing just new features and say putting our own spin on things, tools and so on. So in terms of Pixelmator Photo, it's going to be I guess the best bits in terms of the photo editing tools from Pixelmator Pro. So the color adjustments, repair tool, a few other extra details, and yeah, we'll leave the asset management to the Files app and to the Photos app.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I think that answers his question.
We've just had another question here from someone anonymous, aka me. I've tried a couple of sort of image editing apps, and they all seem to suffer from one similar sort of problem. Like if I create a template, which is normally, let's say, A3, I drop a few rulers on there, like layout guides. I save it, and then I open it up on the desktop. Those guidelines aren't often carried across. Is that something that now works with Pixelmator?
I would actually have to check that. I have to admit and say I've never even been asked that question in my 3 years of Pixelmator and even doing support. So that's actually a very good question and I think that definitely should happen. So if it doesn't, we need to take a look at that. But actually, Pixelmator for iOS doesn't have the persistent alignment guide. It has just the dynamic ones that pop up when you're aligning objects. I guess that's one thing. But I think in general, that's a very logical feature that
I will chat to you after the show about that. I've got a little bit of input, but I will save that for after the show. And just, are there any other sort of like product announcements you want to get in before we wrap up the show?
No, I think we covered pretty much everything that all our products in the pipeline and existing ones. So yeah.
Okay, well, I think that's about it. Thank you very much, Andreas, for coming on the show. Would you like to do the usual promotion of your products by giving out your social media and web presences?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if you're looking for an image editor on the Mac or the iPad or the iPhone, check out Pixelmator. Please, if you do check it out, let us know what you think. I really, really appreciate all feedback, and yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think about it. And if you want, you can check me out on social media. I don't post anything ever, but if you have any questions, I will always answer. And thanks a lot for having me on the show as well.
No, it's been fantastic having you on. It's always good to have a catch up with a guest and find out about the evolution of their products. Oh, I did say I was going to ask you this before you go. What is the oldest bit of Mac hardware you use? And sorry, Apple hardware you use, and what's the newest bit of Apple hardware you use?
I don't have that many old bits around. The first Apple device that I got was, I think, 2006 iMac when I was still in school, and that actually had me hooked pretty much for ever since then. I haven't switched to a Windows device for my computer stuff. And the newest, so the oldest thing I have now is either my iPhone or my MacBook. So my iPhone and MacBook are both from 2017. So I've got iPhone 8 and a Touch Bar MacBook Pro, and the newest bit of hardware is the Series 4 Apple Watch, which I'm enjoying, I have to say. It's quite a nice bit of kit.
I'm saving up for one. I've decided to take the plunge. So if anybody out there wants to buy an Apple Watch Series 2, drop us a line. Andreas from Pixelmator, thank you ever so much for giving up an hour of your time to come on our little show. Obviously, you can find all of the show notes. We'll have links galore to Pixelmator. And I can attest, I'm no artist. I have basically the artistic skills of a 3-year-old with a big red crayon and a white wart, and I've been left unsupervised after having a bar of chocolate. But even I have managed to do quite a bit of successful printing, organising, layouts, filters, using a bit of machine learning to make my photos look better, and it's fantastic. So please go and check out Pixelmator Pro. It really is fantastic. Andreas from Pixelmator, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thanks a lot for having me.
Right, thank you, Andreas. I'm going to chuck in a couple of quick worth of chirps, Mark, before we exit. listeners may remember that I mentioned that I had purchased a cheap Tender Nova MW3 2-pack mesh system for my house. Worth a chirp. That product is now reduced to $60 US or £50 UK on Amazon. And there's a link to a Tech Advisor review who score it very highly. And I have had no complaints from my daughters since I installed it. So there you go. That's my thing. And Rob Ray sent us a Black Friday bundle of 9 Mac OS apps, which is $25. And that's available via the link from Apple World Today. So there you go. So that's it. I think we'll wrap the show up, shall we?
Yeah, that's it. So if you want to catch up with myself, you can find me on the Twitter at Ocean Speed, doing a bit of regular tweeting at Essential Apple. And of course, you can find us at essentialapple.com. Simon, where are you at?
I'm on the Twitters as at Serenak, and that's SERENAK.
And that'll do us.
That's about it.
And don't forget, Pixelmator. They're awesome. Go follow them because they're awesome.
Yes, at Pixelmator is the Pixelmator team.
We have some great stocking stuffer and holiday and anytime gifts on this week's Nemo's Hardware Store, plus a special report, so keep listening. $30 you get Charge Hub V2 from limitlessinnovations.com. CHARGEHUB, all one word. Charge Hub V2 comes in lots of different colors. The one we have is a beautiful silver chrome. It's a USB card charger with a 1.0 and a 2.4 amp USB standard port, and then a seatbelt snipper. If you get caught in an emergency, you need to extricate yourself from a seatbelt, plus a window smasher. So it's a multi-purpose $30, beautifully designed and engineered, premium quality 2-port USB charger for your car, plus an emergency tool. Check it out at limitlessinnovations.com. We will have the links for this and our other items in our show notes for this episode of Essential Apple Podcast. And then in the $40 to $50 range, from my great friend at CatalystCase.com, CatalystCase, Catalystcase.com, are the impact protection cases for all the new iPhones, the regular X and the XS, and then the R, and then the Max. They are $40 to $50 US. Comes in multiple colors. They do not include a front protection. Those cases will be coming out soon, but they protect the back and the sides with volume up and down, mute slider, power sleep button, and then holes at the bottom for the charging and the speaker ports. These are the cases I use on my personal phone. I strongly recommend it. And then you want to get a glass screen protector for the front. We will have that in next week's show. So impact protection cases for all the iPhones in the X series from CatalystCase.com. Strongest personal recommendation. Now stick around for our special report. Thanks for listening to Nemo's Hardware Store every week. We have a special report here from Tucson, Arizona. We have David and we have Bob, and we have a couple of new XR phones. Hi there, David.
Well, it's a 10R.
10R, okay.
Yes, like the Italian singer, right? 10R.
Why did you get the R and not the S or the Max?
Savings in cost.
Okay.
A couple $100 less, and I'm not a big camera buff, so I didn't need the fancy dual camera.
And from your previous 6S to this, what do you notice in improvement, speed, screen, camera?
Not really noticeable with iOS 12 for these old guys, but it's a bigger phone, so things are bigger for these old guys.
Great. Hi there, Bob.
Hi, Nemo. How are you today?
Tell us why you got the R phone.
Well, my SE was getting old in the tooth and was ready for something bigger, and we went to the 10R as opposed to something with the dual cameras. Now, I am a photographer, but I don't consider the cell phone camera to be a real serious camera, and I use it mostly for note-taking or, gee, how big of a thing do I need to go buy at the hardware store, so I take a picture of it before I leave.
And any problems with the R that you've noticed or with iOS 12?
No, things seem to be a little snappier with iOS 12, and I haven't run into any problems. other than when I press the home button, it doesn't recognize my fingerprint.
Good. David, tell us quickly about your amazing iPad purchase also.
Yeah, it's a gigantic 10R without the phone. But yeah, I really got hooked on the getting rid of the fingerprint reader and going to the face recognition. It works just great on the iPad 12.5 inch, better than I was expecting. I was a little concerned in the case that maybe the corner hooks would cover one of the cameras, but I think the cameras are still pretty much in the center. They're just spread a little farther apart to give it the horizontal and vertical, I'm trying to think, landscape and portrait mode.
But it works great either way.
It works great either way, and I was kind of joking this morning. I went to look at it to check for an update, and the thing said, get a little closer in text, and then it opened up for me. But yeah, it's snappy. It's a little bit smaller than my old 12.5 inch. It fits nicely in the case I have, which was adjustable. Of course, you have to have the Apple Pencil 2.
Okay, so
because I can't get the original Apple Pencil to work with. There's no way of pairing it with it. So there's another investment if you're a pencil user. But pencil works good, and it's kind of like almost having a mouse, because you can double tap on the pencil, and some of the apps that are currently available, Procreate is one of them, you can select by just double tapping like you were hitting on a mouse to bring up the tools you want.
Thank you, David. Bob, what about iCloud? Are you using iCloud more, less, or the same with your new phone?
I'm using iCloud more throughout the whole Apple ecosystem, and I'm not having any problems with it yet. I think I need to step away from Apple's default organization where everything from Pages goes here and everything from Numbers goes there, into something that makes a little more sense to me. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I was a little hesitant about face recognition was that you could only have one face. Now, I let my wife have a fingerprint on my phone in case of emergency, and so I'll let her register her face on this phone as well.
So you can have two faces on the R.
You can have two faces on the, I think it's all of them with face recognition with iOS 12.
Very good. Oh, there's Kurt. Hi, Kurt. How you doing?
Hi. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Do you have a new phone also?
I do. I have the 10S.
And what did you have before this?
8.
I thought you were on the annual upgrade program.
I am.
But you skipped a year, or the 8 was your previous
No, the
year?
8 was last year, and
Okay.
I got that and decided not to get the 10 because I wanted to skip a year because it was the first
Very good.
version.
So for you, what's the big change going from the 8 up to the 10S?
I use the camera a lot, and so having a good camera is very important to me. I'm also a photographer, but I don't always carry my big boy camera with me. Bob does, and so he doesn't really need the fancier camera on the phone, but I do, so that's mostly the reason.
Okay. Bob, you're back.
Kurt and I just did a little experiment. We took the same picture and had it on both phones, his 10S and my 10R, and his 10S has a better screen, and we looked at it here in the restaurant, and we really couldn't tell any difference. Is that because of ambient light, or is that because we both wear bifocals? Or both? I'm not sure.
But is it fair to say that you have no complaints about the S, but at the same time, neither of you folks has a complaint about the R, and you would recommend if somebody, for whatever reason, is considering the R, just get it and get on with their life?
Yeah, I mean, it's $200 less.
Yeah.
You can buy your Apple Pay with that and have some change left over, and buy something else with it, a case, whatever.
Right.
So if you're not into, the OLED screen and the dual camera, I think it's a wise choice for the frugal.
And we do recommend a good case and Apple Care. Is that right, Bob?
Yes, a case, Apple Care, and a screen protector.
Absolutely.
And now Apple has a little machine to apply them in their store, not unlike, somewhat similar to the old credit card machine where it slides back and forth and it puts it on correctly the first time.
Good. Thank you, David, and thank you, Bob.
Thank you, John.
Good to see you, Kurt.
Thanks, Nemo. It was fun.
John Nemo, signing off till next time.
You can look at your text message.
And finally, what's for tea tonight?
I'm not sure. I'm actually fancying a kebab right now. So we'll see.
Good lad. Kebab with the boys.
Good lad. You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I forgot. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
I don't know who you are, but I will find you. And when I do, you had better be listening to the Tech Fan podcast, because if you're not, well, you may not live long enough to regret it. Remember, it's called the Tech Fan podcast. Listen, and you won't regret it.
This has been the Essential Apple podcast. Goodbye, and thank you for listening.